Nobody warned me the woman holding my baby at the altar would be wearing my wedding dress, altered 2 sizes smaller, like a trophy she'd finally grown into. I noticed the lace first, then the neckline. Then I understood, and the floor of that church felt like it had been pulled out from under me with a rope. Before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching this from. Drop it in the comments. My name is Renata. For 4 years, I built a marriage the way some people build a house in a storm, one nail at a time, soaked through, refusing to stop because stopping meant losing everything. I married Thomas when his family's furniture business was 3 months from bankruptcy. I sold my car. I moved my savings into his company's account without a single condition attached, because that's what you do when you believe the storm is temporary. The storm passed. The business didn't just survive, it multiplied. Thomas went from a man refinishing tables in a garage to a man whose name was printed on shipping containers across 2 continents. I gave birth to our daughter, Isabel, 14 months into that success. I remember Thomas holding her in the hospital and crying in a way I had never seen him cry, not even during the bankruptcy years. I thought that was the proof. I thought a man who cried like that could never become a stranger. I was wrong about the timeline. I was not wrong about the man. He became a stranger slowly enough that I mistook it for exhaustion. We hired a nanny when Isabel turned 1. Her name was Priscilla. She was 26, efficient, endlessly patient with a colicky baby, and I was grateful for her the way you're grateful for a lifeboat when you don't yet know it has a hole in it. I noticed small things first. Thomas coming home and asking about Isabel's day before he asked about mine. Small, forgivable, a father's priorities. Then Thomas staying in the nursery long after Isabel was asleep, talking to Priscilla in a voice I hadn't heard him use with me in over a year. I told myself it was nothing. Mothers tell themselves that sentence more than any other sentence in the world. Then Thomas's mother, Constance, started inviting Priscilla to family dinners. Not as staff, as a guest. She sat Priscilla 2 seats from Thomas and 3 seats from me, and when I asked why, Constance said the child needed consistency and Priscilla provided it. Consistency. That was the word she used, like Priscilla was a feeding schedule and not a 26-year-old woman slowly replacing me in my own house. I found the messages on a Tuesday in March, the kind of ordinary Tuesday nothing is supposed to happen on. Thomas had left his laptop open. I wasn't looking for anything. I was closing a tab, and there it was, an entire year of conversations that had nothing to do with our daughter's nap schedule. He told Priscilla things he hadn't told me in months, that he felt trapped, that he felt like Isabel's birth had made me disappear into someone he didn't recognize, that Priscilla made him feel like the man he used to be before the money, before the pressure, before me. I sat with that laptop open for 11 minutes before I closed it. I didn't cry. I have learned that the moments that deserve the most tears are often the ones where your body refuses to give you any. I didn't confront him that night. I wanted to see how far it would go and how much of my family would let it happen in front of me before anyone said a word. I didn't have to wait long. Isabel's christening was scheduled for the following month, and Constance insisted on handling the arrangements herself. I assumed that meant flowers and catering. I did not assume it meant she would go into my closet, take my wedding dress from storage, and have it altered for another woman without telling me. I found out the morning of the christening, standing in my own bedroom, reaching for the dress that wasn't there. I called Constance. She answered like she'd been expecting the call and had already rehearsed her calm. She said the dress had sentimental significance for the whole family, and that Priscilla, as Isabel's primary caregiver, deserved to feel included in a meaningful way. I asked her if she understood what she was saying to me. She said I was being emotional, and that today was about Isabel, not about old dresses and old grudges. I want you to sit with that phrase for a moment. Old grudges. As if a woman noticing her husband's mistress wearing her wedding dress to her own daughter's christening is a grudge and not a diagnosis. I could have stayed home. Part of me wanted to. But I had learned something in 4 years of marriage to Thomas's family. Silence in that house was never read as dignity. It was read as permission. So I got dressed. Not in anything borrowed, not in anything altered for someone else's body. I wore black, the kind of black that says I am not here to compete, I am here to witness. The church was full when I arrived. Thomas stood at the front holding Isabel, and beside him, in my dress, stood Priscilla, adjusting the veil like she'd practiced it in a mirror at home. I walked down that aisle in front of 40 guests, and I want you to understand, nobody stopped me. Nobody warned me. Not Thomas. Not Constance. Not a single person who claimed to love me thought I deserved to know before I saw it with my own eyes. I took my seat in the front row, the one meant for the mother of the child. Constance had already placed a small handwritten card there with Priscilla's name on it, redirecting me 2 rows back, beside distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. I picked up that card, read it twice, and set it down face up on the pew so everyone behind me could read it too. Then I sat exactly where I was supposed to sit, in the front row, beside my husband, in front of my daughter. Priscilla noticed first. Her smile faltered the way ice cracks before it fully breaks, a hairline moment nobody else catches until the whole surface gives way. Thomas noticed second. He looked at me the way men look at consequences they convinced themselves would never arrive. The priest began the ceremony anyway, because ceremonies are one of the few things in this world that don't stop for the truth. I sat through the vows over my own daughter's soul with the woman who had been quietly disassembling my marriage standing 4 feet away in my dress, and I did not make a scene. I want to be honest with you about why. It wasn't grace. It wasn't peace. It was strategy. I needed every person in that church to see exactly what was happening with their own eyes, without me saying a single word to color it. It was Thomas's grandfather, Edmund, 91 years old and rarely spoken over by anyone in that family, who broke the silence. He had been sitting near the back, the way old men often do at events they no longer fully believe in. When the priest asked if anyone objected to the joy of this occasion being clouded by dishonesty, a question the man had clearly added himself, off script, Edmund stood up. The church did not expect him to speak. I did not expect him to speak. He had said maybe 6 words to me in 4 years of marriage. He said that he had buried his wife of 58 years in a dress she'd worn only once, on the day she promised herself to him, and that he had never in his life seen a family disrespect a promise the way this one just had. He looked directly at Constance. He said she should be ashamed to call herself the keeper of this family's memory when she had just handed a stranger the memory that belonged to someone else. Constance's face went the color of the tablecloths. He looked at Thomas next. He said a man who cannot be faithful to the mother of his child does not deserve to stand at the front of a church pretending he understands the meaning of a blessing. Thomas said nothing. He has never, in the entire history of our relationship, said anything at the exact moment it mattered. Edmund turned to Priscilla last. He didn't raise his voice. He simply asked her to take off the dress before the photographs were taken, because some things are not hers to be photographed in, regardless of what anyone in that family had told her she was entitled to. Priscilla looked at Thomas. Thomas looked at his shoes. Nobody came to her defense, and I understood in that moment that she had been as disposable to them as I had. She walked out of the sanctuary in my dress. Nobody stopped her either. The ceremony finished in a silence so complete I could hear Isabel's small breathing against the priest's shoulder. Afterward, in the parking lot, Thomas caught up to me and asked what I was going to do. I told him the truth. I told him I had already spoken to a lawyer 3 weeks before the christening, before he even knew I had read those messages. I told him I had spent those 3 weeks quietly moving what belonged to me and what belonged to Isabel into a separate account, the same way I once quietly moved every dollar I had into saving his company, except this time I was building something to survive him, not something to save him. He asked if there was anything he could do to fix it. I told him some things are not fixed. They are only ever replaced, the way a woman he loved was replaced in his own home, in his own bed, and nearly in his own daughter's christening dress. I asked him how it felt now that the replacing had a face and a name attached to it, now that it was happening to him instead of by him. He didn't answer. Some silences are confessions, his was. I took Isabel home that night. I did not go back to that house. What Thomas didn't know was what those 3 weeks with the lawyer had actually uncovered. Priscilla wasn't only in his messages. She was on the company payroll under a made-up consulting title, paid out of funds I had once bled myself dry to save. He hadn't just broken our marriage. He had broken it with money that used to be mine, and he had done it badly enough to leave a paper trail even his own accountant hadn't noticed. 2 weeks after the christening, I sat across from Thomas and his lawyer with mine beside me, and I laid it out the way Constance had once laid a handwritten card on my pew, quiet, precise, impossible to argue with. The consulting payments. The dates that lined up with the messages. The signature on every check his own. He didn't fight it. Men who know they're caught rarely do. He signed over what the court would have made him sign over eventually anyway, except now he did it knowing I had found it myself, without needing anyone in that family to hand it to me. Constance called me once after that, the only time she ever had, and asked if I planned to tell people what really happened. I told her I already had. I told her the story wasn't a secret anymore. It was a settlement, filed and dated, sitting in a courthouse where her opinion of me no longer carried any weight at all. I kept the house Thomas, and I bought before his money made him forget who helped him earn it. I kept Isabel's room exactly as it was, so the only thing that changed for her was who tucked her in at night. I never got the dress back. I stopped wanting it. A dress is fabric. What I got back was the life I had spent 4 years quietly signing away. 6 months later, I heard Priscilla had left the family's employment and left Thomas along with it, once the money that made her feel included ran out. Some people only ever love what a person can give them. Once Thomas had nothing left to give, he found that out the same way I did. Isabel is 2 now. She calls the front row her seat because it's where I always sit at her recitals, her ballet shows, every room she walks into. Nobody moves a card in front of it anymore. If you think a woman only wins when she stops staying quiet and starts paying attention, comment, front row, and subscribe for more stories like this one.